Good evening. The board now reconvenes this meeting of the Plano ISD Board of Trustees in open session at 7:42 p.m. on November 14, 2017 at the Plano ISD Administration Building. I'm Missy Bender, President of the Plano ISD Board of Trustees. On the board's behalf, I wish to extend a warm welcome to all who are present and to our web and video viewers. We will conduct our meeting focusing on the district's two major goals: ensuring the continued improvement in student learning and ensuring the efficient use of resources. Let me introduce my fellow trustees and staff. Seated to my left are Dr. Brian Bingley, Superintendent of Schools, Sarah Bonzer, Interim Deputy Superintendent, Nancy Humphrey, Board Secretary, and Trustee Tammy Richards. Seated to my right are Board Vice President David Stolley, Trustee Greg Meyer, Trustee Dr. Yoram Solomon, and Trustee Angela Powell. At this time, Trustee Dr. Yoram Solomon will share an inspirational message. Dr. Solomon.
Thank you. You know, one of the items we have on the agenda today has to do with elections and with voting. And for a book that I'm working on, some of the research I've done relates to the political polarization we have in our society, in our culture now. And so I wanted to say a few words about that. There's a research that was done by MIT 2 years ago, in 2015, that showed the polarization we have in Congress, in the US Congress, specifically the House of Representatives. The number of agreements between people from different parties on roll call votes in 1973 was 12,921. The number in 2007 was 181. We dropped 98.5% in how we agree across parties. At the same time, by the way, the number of votes actually went up, so it gets even worse. The other thing that we found was kind of interesting. The words Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, progressive, in the dictionary, both Oxford and Merriam-Webster, those are adjectives, but we don't use them as adjectives. We use them as nouns because for our brains to take shortcuts, we put people in boxes. If you're a Republican, I know everything there is to know about you. If you're a Democrat, I know everything there is to know about you. And what I'm going to ask you is, when you hold meetings, for any reason, I want you to use several things. One, use empathy. Empathy doesn't mean that you have to feel sorry for the other person you're talking to, hopefully. Empathy means that you have to understand them, understand where they're coming from. I want you to have accountability and ownership to your part of every communication. And ask yourself one question at the beginning of a meeting, especially if this is going to be an adversarial meeting. What do I have in common with that other person? Because you have some very fundamental things in common with them. Don't put them in another box. Thank you. With that, I want you to ask you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, the board welcomes our FFA student greeters who were going to be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight.
Okay, we'll do it again. We still have the Texas flag.
So we'll have them do that. So students, please come up to the dais at the front of the room, and let's stand again and allow them to lead us this time, maybe the first time in our boardroom, with the Texas pledge. They know it. Because we know they know it.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Very good.
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Helping us to improvise that. Students, parents, supporters, teachers, thank you for attending tonight. We understand, we know that FFA chapters did very well at your recent district competition. Congratulations. Would you please, one by one, introduce yourselves, tell us where you go to school and how long you've been in FFA, and maybe I know FFA has lots of different features to it, So maybe tell us what you're focused on.
Hi, my name is Michaela Nix. I am the president of the Plano West FFA chapter, and I'm a senior at Plano West, and I have been an FFA for 4 years. So I show pigs, and I also compete in floriculture contests.
Hi, I'm Callie Noonan. This is my second year in FFA, and I go to Plano West. I'm a junior, and I'm the vice president for our chapter. This will be my second year showing chickens and my first year showing pigs.
Hey, I'm Quentin Artho. This is also my 4th year in FFA, Plano West FFA. And I'm secretary, and I named my pig after my best friend.
I'm Hannah Hughes. This is my second year in FFA. I'm the treasurer this year for Plano West. I show pigs. I'm also on the top team in North Texas for vet science.
Hi, I'm Monique Kinsella. I'm the reporter for the Plano West FFA chapter. I'm a junior. This will be my 3rd year in the FFA, and I'm on the qualifying vet team for state.
Hi, my name is Blake Foley. I'm a senior. This is my 4th year in FFA at Plano West, and I also show pigs, and I'm on the horse judging team.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Flores. I am a junior at Plano West. This is my second year in FFA. I showed chickens last year, and this year I'm showing a pig.
Hi, I'm Sarah Diver. This is my 3rd year in FFA. I am membership committee chairperson, and this is my 2nd year raising a lamb.
Hi, I'm Kat James. This is the 4th year I've been in FFA, so I'm a senior. I've shown pigs for 3 years, and I'm also the social committee chair.
Hi, I'm Paige Bruno. This is my 2nd year in FFA at Plano West. This will be my 1st year showing chickens and my 2nd year showing lambs. Hi, I'm Katie Hanna. This is my 1st year in FFA. I'm a freshman at Shepton, and I'm competing with our junior skills team.
All right, well, fantastic, students. I bet, since all of you are at Plano West or Shepton in that feeder, I bet you might have some teachers here supporting you. Can we see your teacher? Okay, thank you for both of you being here. And do any of you have family members, friends that are here supporting you as well? Thank you for supporting these students. And let me just tell you, on our agenda tonight, we're also considering the construction for the new barns for your program. So that's some good news. Please join me in applauding these students and their incredible accomplishments. So please, we're going to have a picture, so let's facilitate that. And then once we've done that, then you're free to leave. And we appreciate you staying as we were running a little bit late. Thank you.
Somebody stand.
Okay, come on over. Oh, picture together.
Oh, we all stand?
Do you want us to stand? Stand behind them so we don't have to fuss. Okay.
I'm getting front.
Just get your chair out.
Stand behind me.
Thank you again, students, teachers, family. FFA is a tremendous program, and we talk about a lot of wonderful programs that we have in the district, and this is one where a lot of students find their special place in our school system. We'll now move on to the recognition part of our agenda. Carla Oliver, Assistant Superintendent for Government, Community, and Planning Initiatives, is made aware of student guests. Oh, I'm sorry. Carla Oliver, our Assistant Superintendent for Government, Community, and Planning Initiatives, is made aware of student guests prior to the meeting. Ms. Oliver, do we have any this evening?
No, we don't.
Thank you. The board is also proud to recognize our students who have achieved at the state level and above. And we are thankful to our dedicated teachers that help make these achievements possible and for the support families provide to students to help them be successful. Student names are included on the PowerPoint, and more detail about these awards is available on our website. I'm just going to list some of the items that you will read about. 207 seniors have received commended recognition from National Merit Scholarship Corporation. 33 seniors are finalists in the College Board's National Hispanic Recognition Program. At the Battle of the Brains coding competition, Plano West teams took first and third place at the advanced level and third place novice. At the state UIL 6A cross-country meet, Plano Senior High School junior Ashlyn Hilliard earned third place. In the Texas Junior Academy of Sciences competition, Plano ISD students received 2 grand prizes, 8 first prizes, 16 second prizes, 12 third prizes, and 7 honorable mention awards. In the Siemens competition in math, science, and technology, Plano ISD students received 11 semifinalist and 4 regional finalist awards. And in fine arts, 2 student artworks were selected for the National College Board Advanced Placement Art Exhibition. Let's give them all a round of applause. We are pleased tonight to also recognize an extra special teacher this evening, Rhonda Smith from Plano West. Rhonda has been inducted into the Texas Forensics Association, or TFA, Hall of Fame. Rhonda, please come to the podium at the front of the room. And Greg Arp, the Theater and Speech Coordinator, is here to introduce Rhonda, and Board Secretary Nancy Humphrey will present the Board's Certificate of Recognition.
Please excuse my lengthy introduction because this is a very special person and deserves a lot of recognition. The purpose of the Texas Forensics Association is to bring about more effective cooperation among the members of the speech and theater arts profession in the discharge of their special responsibilities in forensic and theater activities, to create a means of educating the general and professional publics to the important educational functions of forensics and theater arts, to make collective action possible on problems of common professional interest, and in general to maintain and advance the ideals and standards of speech and theater arts professions. The Texas Forensics Association shall promote the interest of interscholastic speech and theater by encouraging a spirit of fellowship among participating students and teachers. Rhonda Smith, speech and debate coach at Plano West Senior High School, was inducted into the Texas Forensics Association, or TFA, Hall of Fame at the Texas Speech Communication Association Convention in San Antonio on October 6, 2017. According to those who know her best, she has spent her career helping others succeed as teacher and mentor. Plano Senior High School debate coach Cheryl Potts states, "I nominated Rhonda because she works hard and has remarkable skills as a speech and debate coach. Her students' successes can attest to that." Plano West Senior High Principal Kathy King says, "What sets Rhonda apart is her relationship with her students, her belief in them, her ability to build them up, her innate drive to help them exceed beyond their personal expectations, and her unique ability to touch their lives forever." Former students have glowing words about Rhonda as a teacher and as a caring adult in their lives. When struggling with a family crisis, one of her students said, "No matter how hard she makes me work in debate, she never let me lose sight of what really mattered in life." Speaking at the convention, Plano West speech and debate assistant coach and teacher Katie Lido said that Rhonda has helped everyone in the room, from hosting state tournaments to helping new coaches. She said, "It's an honor to learn from the best. Texas Forensics Association and the speech and debate as a whole are a better place because of Rhonda Smith." Jasper debate coaches Tom McCaffrey and Clarissa Moreno say that she is fearsome and fierce. Vines debate coach Brent Winger thinks she is determined. The Shepton debate coach Chris Hammer says she has both the biggest heart and the most humility of anyone I know. McMillan debate coach Robert Shepard states, "Rhonda Smith is a coach, mentor, and educator that has truly made an impact, not just in speech and debate, but in her community, her school, and in the state of Texas." Jason Warren, the TFA treasurer, said that Rhonda's program is not only competitive at TFA State, but also in the National Speech Association's national tournament as a multi-time top 10 school. But that is not the reason Rhonda deserves to be in this Hall of Fame. Rhonda deserves to be in the Hall of Fame because every educator can learn from Rhonda. When her students succeed, as they often do, she is the first to say, "Don't congratulate me, congratulate them." They are the ones who did the work, and if a student fails, she is the first to say, "I should have taught them better." I should have made sure they were on the right path. The Hall of Fame honor is given to coaches that not only have success as a coach, but also have significant service contributions to the organization. Rhonda serves on the Executive Council for TFA as a mentor for coaches across the state. She has been nominated for the Texas Speech Communication Association's Teacher of the Year for the past 2 years, and says that her proudest moment was being selected as the Plano West Teacher of the Year in 2015-2016. She has served on committees for UIL, as well as the National Speech and Debate Association, and has taught at multiple summer debate camps, including the University of North Texas, the University of Texas in Austin, and the University of Texas in Dallas. Rhonda is the most recent of TFA Hall of Fame inductees from Plano ISD, which includes a long legacy of honorees, including Cindy Timmons, Barbara McCain, Karen Wilbanks, Cheryl Potts, and Robert Shepard. We are so incredibly proud of Rhonda teaching the students of Plano ISD. She is an incredible leader, teacher, colleague, and friend to all speech teachers across the state. So we ask you to congratulate Rhonda on her well-deserved award.
All right, Rhonda, on behalf of the board, I'm proud to hand you this certificate that acknowledges your induction to the Texas Forensics Association Hall of Fame. Congratulations, and thank you for what you do to this, for the students, not to the students. Thank you. And don't ever get an argument with me, I will lose. Thank you.
Rhonda, do you want to make any comments? You're welcome to.
That's what I was trying to see.
I just want to thank all of you. Speech and debate has such a large impact on students, not only when they're in high school, but far beyond that. And I'm so proud not only of what they do when they're in high school, but when I'm able to keep up with them and see what they do as adults. That is what this is all about. So regardless of what you teach or what you coach or what you do with students on a daily basis, you're making a difference in their lives that'll carry with them forever. And that is your legacy. That's your part of making the world a better place. Every single kid that you affect is your legacy to make the world better. And I'm glad I can be a part of that.
Well, Ms. Smith, before you go, thank you. We congratulate you. Thank you for what you do for our children. We are immensely proud of you. Congratulations.
Yes. Thank you for teaching in Plano ISD. And you know what an honor it is to be recognized by your peers in your profession. Congratulations. We will now move to the regular public comment portion of our agenda. For the public comment portion of our agenda, the board has public comment cards that are accepted from 6 to 7 p.m. Cards are not accepted after 7 p.m. and are not transferable to other parties or speakers. All cards have now been collected and given to Carla Oliver or a representative of the Communications Department, who will present the speakers during this time. Ms. Oliver, do we have any speakers for public comment at this time in the agenda?
We do have 3 cards. They are all marked as non-agenda items.
Okay. Therefore, non-agenda items will take place at the end of the regular business that the board conducts. Therefore, we will move forward to the consent agenda. This includes personnel recommendations, minutes of previous meetings, bids, purchases, and construction items. Are there any requests to remove an item or items from the consent agenda for further discussion? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion for approval as presented?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. So the ag barn got approved right
Yeah,
then.
that's right. They're gone.
All right, the next section of the agenda are items for discussion and action. So the first item is related to the Barksdale Elementary Kindergarten class size waiver. Dr. Beth Brockman, the Assistant Superintendent for Employee Services, will open the discussion regarding Barksdale Elementary School's enrollment, which has now exceeded the 22-to-1 student-teacher ratio in kindergarten. Dr. Brockman.
Good evening, thank you. Yes, we have exceeded the 22-to-1 ratio with our kindergarten enrollment at Barksdale. At last check, which was late last week, we had 22-to-1 in some of our classes and 23-to-1 in 2 of our classes. Normally, we would then move forward with hiring another teacher and adding a section, but we are out of room. There is not a classroom available at the campus to add a class at this time. So we are asking that we approve a waiver of the 22-to-1 requirement.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the recommendation to accept this, to promote this waiver as presented?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I have a question. What's the plan if we show back up in January and there's 8 more kids?
Well, right now, the technical class roster is 23-to-1 in a couple of the classes, but the actual student to teacher in the classroom is 22-to-1 in those classes. As soon as we reach a point where we've added a couple of more students, we will hire an additional staff member that will then float in and out of those classrooms to assist with small groups, with
within
whatever.
the space that we have, we'll add another staff member.
Right. It's not needed at this time, but we are watching the situation.
Well, I would point out, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but it would seem to me this late in the school year to split classes up of kindergartners to add another class of kindergartners would probably be more detrimental than having a floating assistant teacher. Is that true?
We will reach that point very soon. We have added a class of first grade at Barksdale within the last few weeks because it also went above 22-to-1, and they had one classroom left that was available. So we chose the first grade because those classes were bigger.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. Item B is related to the 2018-19 instructional calendar. Carla Oliver, the Assistant Superintendent for Government, Community, and Planning Initiatives, will provide survey feedback. Ms. Oliver.
Thank you, President Bender. See, I think I need to get this closer. It's that time. We've had a ongoing survey regarding calendar and our community's preferences and their input, and you've received that information. Largely, the results that I first shared with you as an update last month, they have not changed greatly. If you have questions about this particular portion that you received, Leslie Range-Stanton had sort of guided this effort from her office, and she can certainly answer any of the questions that you might have about that. Otherwise, I'm happy to go over the features of the calendar again if you prefer.
It's not a question, it's kind of a bit of a concern. I looked at the results of this study, and I know that in the survey what we did was we asked them, we gave them 2 options. And both options start 2 weeks earlier than they did last year. And then we asked for kind of an open-ended, any other comments. And what I see here is that while 37% said that they would favor a later start than the 2 options we have, what worries me is that 53% did not specify any date. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
So it kind of concerns me a little if this is a message that we're getting that they did not like any of those 2 and that's why they didn't check them, or any other reason.
No,
or it wasn't of great importance.
That's a different point. The
Yeah.
number of people who selected versus didn't select is different. This is just according to the comments. So the comments, some people said, we want a longer Thanksgiving break, or
Right.
they didn't say anything about start date.
No, but the first line there,
Mhm.
in the last page that you gave, Says
This is only
53%.
regarding the comments. So the comments, some people didn't leave a comment, a certain percentage of people didn't bother to leave a comment. Of the people who did, and I think we had about 2,000 comments, 1,081 had a comment that was not related to start date.
Oh, so it's a non-specific, not specific to start date comment.
Right.
It's not that they did
So
not
it
check
might have
any of the
been,
2 dates.
We really want to have a fall break, but they didn't mention start date. Or, have you considered adding minutes, but they didn't mention start date? Or, whatever you do, would you consider what other districts are doing? So comments like
Okay.
that. So they were just not, so 54%, I'm sorry, didn't mention start date at all in their comments. This is
Okay.
only pertaining to comments.
I understand.
Okay. All right, so the board received the survey information that concludes the effort that the board asked for the communications department to undertake, which they've done over the last several months. We need to make a decision this evening. We've had a previous occasion to consider adding another option. We chose not to do that. We kept it with these 2 options. We now have A and B before you. Do I have a motion to adopt a calendar draft, A or B?
I move that we adopt calendar A with an August 13th start date and with semesters at 87 and 90 days.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you to the Communications Department for working so hard to get the information out to the community. We asked you to do that, and you did that. Thank you. We had 6,000 responses from all parts of the, our PISD community, teachers, staff, parents, students, and
Our pleasure.
we appreciate it. All right. Item 8C is the approval of required annual financial reports for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2017. Steve Fortenberry, our CFO for a few more days, will introduce our next item for discussion, which is the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, also called CAFR, for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2017. This is the report that is resulting from the annual financial product audit process. Mr. Fortenberry.
Thank you, President Bender. And as hopefully we're pulling a PowerPoint up, I'll just remind you, this is the meeting each year where we actually have agenda items that cover 3 fiscal years. This particular report was for the 16-17 year. Later we'll go through our first report findings, which were for the previous year. And then also on the consent agenda, you approve budget amendments for the 17-18 year. So several different years rolling here at the same time. You did receive via email 2 or 3 days ago the draft of the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. It's a draft because it's not final until you vote on it tonight. The audit was performed by Weaver and Tidwell. As pretty much always, we received an unmodified opinion from the external auditors. That's what you're hoping for, which means the financial statements are fairly presented. And then they also, as part of the audit, conducted this with the single audit provisions for the federal government, for the federal programs that we have. And this afternoon at 4 o'clock, we reviewed this with the Board Audit Committee. And so they had the opportunity, as they do each year, to meet with the auditors and go through the report in more detail. So we'll just hit the highlights tonight. As far as the general fund, the change in fund balance in the general fund, we actually had an increase of about $33 million. We had budgeted a surplus of about $8 million going into the year, and the rest of that increase was primarily the result of underspending our budget by about 2.9%. So going into it with the surplus budgeted, and then as always we underspend the budget, we did add to the fund balance this year to bring us to an ending fund balance of a little over $227 million. 11.3 million of that was assigned, so it's not available to spend in future years. That was for encumbrances or purchase orders that we carried forward from the previous year. And the majority of that was several of our roofing projects that were for hail damage repairs that were not closed out at June 30th. We also had inventory and prepaids that are non-spendable of about $1.2 million. So if you back those out, we have an unassigned fund balance of a little less than $215 million, which is about 37.6% of the expenditures for the general fund.
Steve, you and I talked this afternoon. Let's talk a little bit about the fund balance and kind of what's recommended.
Okay. The board's policy says that the fund balance should not fall below 20% of our expenditures, and so this is certainly more than that. If we weren't faced year in and year out with these large increases in our recapture payment to the state, in fact, for the 17-18 budget, our recapture payment went up $50 million to now a total of $154 million. Next year, we project it to be over $200 million. Those are some circumstances and some other considerations, I think, that would tell you probably need to have more than that 20% in fund balance, which we do. There will be a year sometime in the future where property value growth either stops or certainly slows down. There's a 1-year lag with the recapture payment. And so when that year hits, you kind of get in a hole that year, which again is another reason to have a very healthy fund balance. It was only 6 years ago that the legislature cut our budget by $35 million, and we, like most districts, responded to that with the reduction in force and cuts in programs. One nice thing about having a healthy fund balance, healthier now than it was then, maybe it buys you a year or two to where you can wait for the economy to come back or another legislative session and use up some of that fund balance rather than having to go through a big reduction like we did back then. So I don't know what that perfect number is. I think with all the things that we're faced with, particularly recapture, I think the 20% is probably a low figure. I don't know what the high end would be. I think you should feel pretty comfortable with it at the level it's at.
So I asked this question of Steve earlier just because I'm concerned about how high that number is and as a percentage, because we're not a for-profit entity here. But that's not for this conversation. So Randy, the can just got kicked down the road. Welcome to the district.
Well, if I recall, in the immediate past legislative session, we had had on our priority list the flexibility to, we have a voter-approved rate for our M&O, $1.17. We were asking for the flexibility to lower that rate in years that we could, but then be able to return to the voter-approved rate. So in that regard, if we had that flexibility, we could adjust what we add to our fund balance so that it isn't making us feel like it's getting too big. But it's also, as Mr. Fortenberry said, we can't predict when our revenue source might dip because of property value changes. So it would be nice to have that flexibility in the tax rate so that we could reduce in given years the amount that we're adding to fund balance, put that money back in our taxpayers' pockets to spend in this local economy. So that's just a point of reflection from my perspective of the last legislative session.
I think that's a great additional point. If you had the flexibility this year to lower the tax rate based on last year's surplus for at least 1 year, but then when you were faced with the higher recapture payment the next year, you could raise it back up, that would certainly be a nice tool to have, not just for the school district, but especially for the taxpayers.
And
so it's unfortunate that that didn't go anywhere in the legislature.
Right, and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sometimes not remembering numbers quite right, but it seems like it was $10.7 million that could have gone back into our local economy had we had the flexibility to lower our rate for about 3.5 cents. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
I have to respectfully disagree with the usage of any money we consider extra. We have one elementary school that's improvement required. We have one middle school that's quite challenged. We have about 20 schools all total that are on our watch list. And so until all those children are in schools that we feel really proud of, I don't think we can say we've got extra money.
Well, and certainly that's not a conversation for tonight. I mean, that's where I was saying it's kicked down the road to Randy. But that is a conversation that we as a board need to have, because there's a lot of money there that is significantly more than 20%, which is what our policy is. And so we need a strategy for the use of that money, whether it's, that we have to develop that at a different meeting, but it's a concern to me.
And it's a good problem to have.
It is, but
it's something that needs to be looked at.
Well, but at the same time, let's just make sure that the fact that we have, I don't want to call it found money, we've been conservative in this money. Let's not take this as a reason to spend.
I promise I won't.
I know you won't.
Okay, the next fund, and we go through these fund by fund because we look at each one of these separately, and they're accounted for separately. So the next fund is our debt service fund. That's the fund where we collect, it's funded almost entirely with property taxes, and it's used exclusively to pay our principal and interest on our outstanding debt. And any balances that are left over in there can only be used to make debt payments. We did have an increase in the debt service fund of about $9.5 million, and really that's because this is accounted for on a fiscal year basis. It ends on June 30th, but the taxes are collected for a calendar year, so we had to over collect during that fiscal year because our August interest payment went up by $7 million over the previous year as we started our new bond program and had our debt issuance from the summer of 16. So our total ending fund balance is $40.1 million in the debt service fund, but 45 days after year end, we made a $21.6 million interest payment, which lowered the net amount remaining to a little under $19 million, which was about $2 million more than it was the year before, but we have a higher debt payment. So that one, there's no reason at all. You need to keep a safe amount in there to where if for some reason your tax collections percentage-wise aren't good that year, you can still make the payment. We're in a good position in there, but there's nothing that you can do with that fund balance other than make debt payments.
Mr. Fortenberry, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I missed it. Would you back up a couple of slides to the one where there's a comment about I'm going the wrong way myself. There's a comment, I believe it's on the key findings slide about the significant deficiency that was there.
Yes.
Are you going to comment on that at some point?
Yes. That slide wasn't up when I started the comment, so I kind of skipped over that, but there's 2 slides at the end of the presentation where
Perfect. Thank you.
where I will talk about that in a little bit more detail. Sorry about that. If I'd meant to look over it, I wouldn't have had those other slides, but I skipped past it when discussing it. Okay, any questions on the debt service fund? If not, we'll move on to the capital projects fund. A significant change in fund balance in the capital projects fund. The fund balance increased by $245 million. That's entirely because of the $300 million of bonds that were sold back in August of 2016 as we started the bond program. If you recall, we decided based on the very low interest rate environment to go ahead and sell about 60% of our bond authorization, even though it's a 5-year program. So that money flowed into the capital projects fund, and as it takes us a little while to get those projects underway, it certainly had not all been spent by the end of the year. So we ended the ended the year with a fund balance of about 289 million, which again was a $245 million increase. And I believe we had somewhere in your, that, you know, this lengthy report, in one of the footnotes, it indicates that we had $136 million of projects which were in process on June 30th. So I didn't want to leave the indication we're slow with doing that. It's just that we're paying for the work as it gets done, and you'll continue to see those expenditures go up the next couple of years as we get further and further into the bond program.
Steve, could I just make another comment, please, on that?
Sure.
Regarding that $300 million bond issuance in August, we took advantage of an amazing deal of the century there. And what was our rate? 1.2%?
Well, that was the one we did this August. This
yeah.
rate was,
Oh, is this from last year?
yeah, this
Before?
one was from August of 16. The
Oh,
one,
okay.
the one you're thinking of, we did this 2 months ago, I guess, August of
That's what I was
17.
thinking.
It was 120 million, and the interest rate was about 1.54%, I think. We're
Okay.
only, over the entire life of the bonds, we're only paying $7 million beyond the principal. So,
Okay. I just wanted to point out the incredible rates, the efficiency that we manage our debt service payments, and the incredible rating this district has because of its fiscal responsibility, and thank you.
thank you. And even, I don't remember the interest rate on the 300 million, but even there, our, as I recall, the interest payments were less than 15 cents on the dollar as far as our total payments. It's not quite as close to being 100% principal as the last one, but it was also very good.
Okay, sorry I took you off track.
Okay, as far as our other funds, you'll see them in the audit report, and they're all in one column, and then further back in the audit report, they break them out and give you more detail. But if you look at all those funds combined, and those are not budgeted funds, you don't adopt a budget for them other than for the FAN's budget, which is included in that. That ending fund balance was about $19 million, and you can see on this slide where that lies. The two biggest areas are the FAN's budget, which had a fund balance of $7 million, and the campus activity funds for our 72 or 3 campuses cumulatively total about $4.7 million. Okay, Mr. Meyer, this gets back then to the deficiency. As part of the audit, one of the major federal programs that was chosen for further review, they chose 2. One was a Head Start program, one was the FANS, which is our Food and Nutritional Services budget. As part of their testing in the FANS budget, they review the free and reduced meal applications. Most of those, not to get too complex with this, but most of our free and reduced approvals we get through a direct certification file that the Texas Department of Agriculture sends us. So if a family is qualified for various programs like SNAP, I think maybe the WIC vouchers, others, they've submitted that information to the state, and rather than having them repeat it, we get a file that tells us that those students are eligible. We get that monthly, but then we also have, as the years go on, fewer and fewer manual applications that come in where the families filled it out and they've indicated their family income and the other information that's required. As they tested those, they found 5 instances in which the data entered did not match the income support on the application. Probably the best example I can give you was a simple transposition error where the family had, I think the example the auditor gave was $1,183 of bi-weekly income. That was entered instead of $1,183, it was transposed and entered as $1,138. The cutoff was $1,140. And so we showed the child is eligible for free and reduced lunch, but they should not have been. And so part of the problem with that, we had some staff turnover. There was really one person that was doing most of that work. And with the finance department, in conjunction with Cynthia Lee and the finance department, you can see on this next page, and by the way, the question cost of all 5 of those combined was a little under $1,000, which we need to get that right, but again, it's not the majority of what goes on there. The corrective action we're taking, there's going to be some additional professional learning and training. We're now going to have 3 different staff that reviews, verifies, and signs off on that work. In about 3 months, the internal auditor will come back and do a review to kind of see where we are with it. So this shows an expected completion date of June 30th, but we're really working on that and have already taken steps in that area. Any questions on that? Well, that concludes the brief presentation. This is an item that you do need to take action on tonight, so we would recommend approval of the comprehensive annual financial report.
Do I have a motion to approve the comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2017 as presented?
I make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item.
Can I make a comment, if I
Okay.
may?
Go ahead.
When we met with the auditors today, I just wanted to let everyone know the amazing comments that came from the auditors. Working with the Plano ISD financial staff every year, they're so easy to work with. They're documented, their documentation is so good, and stellar among districts is all I could say. So we got very good compliments from the external auditors today.
And none of those comments did they use the word Steve in. They were talking about Linda Madden and Christy Tate and the whole group in finance.
Right. So why don't we just recognize them? I know
That's
you all
right. They
are
always
here
do a
now.
great job.
Can you guys just take a minute and stand, and we'll, all of those who are contributing to this report, thank you. All right, thank you. Next item on our agenda is the culture of voting resolution. Carla Oliver will introduce the discussion regarding the adoption of a resolution to support a voting culture in Plano ISD. Ms. Oliver.
Thank you, President Bender. We do have before you for your consideration a resolution, and it actually comes from TASB, encouraging a culture of voting among your district. And this is sweeping across and an option for other board members to consider, as well as we look toward the future of how we support the notion of voting and how important it is in both our schools and elsewhere. This also comes under the moniker, they have a special logo for this that's called Texas Educators Care Enough to Vote. So this is a message that would go far and wide for both adults and for those who are becoming of age to vote. And it's something for you to consider as a board if you'd like to institute that here in Plano ISD.
Thank you, Carla. So you've had a chance to review the resolution. This is something that TASB created in an effort to increase the focus that we place on creating a voting culture in our students and in our employee base. Here's a couple of statistics that I'll share with you. There are, maybe 1,050-ish school districts in Texas, and 233 school districts have chosen to participate in this. They've chosen not to pass a resolution, but they're taking the actions. Another 86 have already adopted the resolution. In our neighborhood, some of our neighboring districts include Allen and Frisco that have already adopted this, and Richardson is soon considering it. Those are just a few around us. So this is for the board's consideration. If you look at the voting statistics from a participation point of view, they're pretty lackluster. So if we don't do something in our this is an opportunity for us to encourage the next generation to participate in the voting process, and to remind our employees and each other to participate in every election, not just the bond elections that we run or the school board elections, but every election, so that we can hopefully create a voting culture.
Do you want a motion and discussion or discussion and
So,
motion?
do I have a motion to adopt the resolution?
Well, I'll move to put it on the table.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, do I have any discussion?
Yes.
Yes. You wanna go, you want me to go?
Okay, I'll go. You know, initially I didn't realize that this was something that's coming from TASB and as one whole thing, and I wanted to, as you know, I wanted to offer a few changes, a few modifications. One of my biggest concerns that I felt that the resolution was missing is that there will be no influence or consequences and retaliation to employees voting or not voting, voting for or against anything on the ballot. Whether it's issues or candidates, we need to assure that the voting remains confidential, that we don't ask how did you vote and so on. But the thing is, once I started looking at the websites that the website that TASB put for this, I started realizing that this is not free of influence. There is a page there that says the people you elect decide how much to fund public schools, how much time, money, and attention is spent on standardized testing, whether to support or undermine public education. Even the wording that's used here is kind of guiding. Whether to privatize education in Texas, I feel that's guiding as well. The document that they created there also includes data and support from the Texas Parent Political Action Committee, which does have a political position on, and it really, this is a paragraph that states many legislative races are contests between strong public school supporters and opponents who are not. You know, just reading that statement, you already know which side you're on. The Texas Parent PAC wants to inform all voters of the pro-public education candidates endorsed by our grassroots political committee. So we're actually kind of influencing them who to vote for. If you want to, if you would like to see a list of legislative candidates who will stand up for children, we're kind of leading them, or this organization leads them. The real key to our future is a viable public school entity lies in the ballot box. We all must encourage parents, educators, and other school employees and supportive business people to vote for candidates who will support our public school through positive actions.
Can I just make a comment?
Yeah.
What you're reading is not TASB created. TASB created the resolution, not that website.
Somewhere there they say, well, this is the website that has
So
the.
what we're considering is the resolution.
I understand,
Okay.
but I keep going through this, and I failed to see the separation between that and TASB throughout their documentation. There is a list of parent organizations, and many of those parent organizations are organizations with specific positions. One of the things that we're asking is for educators to vote, to give an oath to vote, and it says that I will vote in support of public education in the interest of more than 5 million Texans. There's specific organizations that are mentioned, as I said before. One of the things that even worried me more is that there is a document over there that says the superintendent's timeline for creating a culture of voting. By the way, it's hard for me to separate the resolution comes from the same source, the same place.
They're attaching the resolution. It's not the same organization.
Okay. Then there is a superintendent's timeline for creating a culture of voting. Over there is in October, we're probably not applied to us anymore, but it says we will offer a reward for anyone who shows his or her confirmed email that they submitted their signed oath. We let employees know about rewards for I voted stickers. We will give them rewards. There are potential rewards like gift cards. And I want to read to you something that really worries me. The U.S. Code 18597, expenditures to influence voting, and this is what it reads. It's only one paragraph. Whoever makes or offers to make an expenditure to any person, either to vote or withhold his vote, doesn't matter what you vote for, or to vote for or against any candidate, and whoever solicits, accepts, or receives any such expenditure in consideration of his vote or the withholding of his vote, so for example, all those rewards fall into that, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned for no more than 1 year. I think 1 year is a lot. And the violation, if the violation is willful, then no more than 2 years, which is even more than 1 year. With all of that, I have to ask, have our lawyers looked at this?
The TASB lawyers?
Our lawyers. We're the ones who are going to spend the 2
Carla,
years, not TASB.
has Abernathy looked at this resolution? No. Okay. So some of the
Not on
items.
our behalf.
Okay. Some of the items that you're reading are from a website. They're not from the resolution, right?
That resolution came from the same website.
The resolution is, I'll say it again, the resolution was created by TASB. That website is not created by TASB.
So may I offer a comment regarding the resolution? There's 3 points in there that I think if we can amend this resolution, might make it have the spirit of voting that we're trying to get. I would definitely recommend taking out all of those website. I can't really see what, 1, 2, 3, bullet number 3 and bullet number 4, which say such as TexasEducatorsVote.com and such as Teach
Which is the
Vote.
website I was.
Right, so what I would suggest is if we want to just have a resolution that promotes a culture of voting, I'm all in favor. I think everybody should be voting.
Mhm.
But, okay, I would take out those 2 references as well as bullet number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. I really don't believe I would want to commit district transportation to get people to the polls. I disagree with that part.
I'm going to have to make a comment at that too about that comment where feasible, providing district transportation to and from polling places. I don't believe that our taxpayers' money should be focusing on that. I think that taxpayers' money should focus on this, that we are number 2 right now on student transportation cost per student. And so, I mean, if we are concerned about being fiscally responsible, I feel that, you know, bullet number 7 needs to be removed. And also, I was reading bullet number 8, and it says for employees to wear the I voted sticker. What happens if a teacher doesn't wear the I voted sticker? Sometimes, you know, they might feel shamed into not having an I voted sticker.
Well, that's usually just something at the polls that they give you, and you have the choice to wear or not. It's
But
just-
but here it says.
And it's a no cost here. I think I don't have a problem with that, being a no cost incentive to vote. Because I always wear mine when I vote.
Do we have current policies that would preclude a teacher from wearing the I voted?
It's First Amendment, right?
Yeah, I have to echo similar concerns that Dr. Solomon and Mrs. Humphrey had. I would be open to considering this if we struck, I guess it's bullets 3, 4, and 8, because I had similar concerns with the transportation issue as well.
I think several districts have expressed that and have omitted that particular item regarding transportation.
And, yeah.
I also have a concern about the administrative procedures that provide time during the early voting period. You can vote early on Saturdays, you can vote early late evenings, and so once again, I think that would be a use of taxpayer dollars to enable voting when they could be serving our children.
I agree with that too. I'm sorry, I missed
Yeah,
that.
and I would want, if we do that, again, I agree, we have to disconnect this from that website, the such as, no, not such as this one, definitely not such as this one. I'd be happy if we say not like this page. But then we have number 6 and number 7, I'm not happy with the providing time and with providing district transportation. And I do feel very strongly that, look, we have a voting problem. We have a local election voting turnout problem. We have 1 in 20 people showing up. So if we look at this audience, there are going to be 3 people in this audience that are going to vote and everybody else is not. based on our statistic. That's a problem. But I want to make sure that if we do this, we include something that says this is going to be free of any influence, any consequences, any retaliation, and that it's confidential. I would strongly encourage them to vote, but not, we can't spend money, that's a federal offense, and we cannot, it has to be free of influence, any influence.
I can agree with that.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, actually, I'd probably get rid of everything but the first 2 bullet points.
Whereas?
That we're going to inform employees and eligible students of the importance of voting and when and where they may vote. I mean, honestly, I think the rest of that stuff is superfluous.
You know, I go around schools and I talk about elections and I talk about voting, and I do an exercise with them to show when you have 20 students in a classroom, I ask one of them to stand, I ask everybody else to look at him and say, or her, and realize that this is the only person who's going to vote. I'm all for let's encourage them to vote, but we have to be neutral. We have to be free of influence.
Okay. So, given what feedback I'm hearing, would you be comfortable with maintaining items 1 and 2? And eliminating, and then adding the, Yorm, is it still necessary to add the item that you suggested if the only thing that is taking place is district communications to inform?
Yes, I feel very strongly that we need to make sure that, you know, this is one of those things that later we're going to have situations where there was influence and people will say, we didn't know. I don't want to have we didn't know. That's, you're not allowed to
Okay, so let me get the language right. So
Okay.
on the, in addition to items 1 and 2, the third potential item, I just made a few comments. I heard you say free of influence, confidential. Can you give me a sentence? You said
Oh,
that.
use
Free of
those words in a
retaliation.
sentence?
Yes.
Voting, or voting we encourage, you know, here is what I would suggest, because my first concern was whether we had our lawyers look through it.
All right, so why
at
don't
all.
we table this?
Yes.
Get it modified, have our attorneys
Legal
review
review.
it, and then we'll consider it at the next meeting. Okay, is that
Perfect.
acceptable?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Item 8E is, do I need to vote on the tabling?
We did have a motion on the table.
Do we have- okay.
We did have a motion, so we
Yeah.
probably,
Oh, yeah.
we probably ought to vote it down.
Okay, so.
No, I think what you want to do probably is have a motion to table that first
Okay,
motion.
so let me, who made the motion?
I
Is
think
it
I
table or
did.
postpone to a later meeting? Because table means you take it back up during this meeting.
Okay, so.
You can
would-
say a date certain, which you did.
Would you like to amend the original, whoever made the motion, you want to amend the original motion to,
I made the motion, but I don't know how we want to amend it. I guess I will take the amendment and, their suggestion for amendment, and move that we provide additional language, and you want the attorneys to look at it?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
have the attorneys look at it, and then we will bring it back for consideration of this board on November 28th. Is there a second?
yeah. Do we accept the amended motion?
Poor Kim.
All right.
It's recorded.
You're gonna watch the video like 3 times tomorrow.
She got it.
All right, all in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you, motion
All right.
passes.
May I ask a quick clarifying question?
Yes.
So you did say at the work session, not at the December
We
meeting,
did say that.
correct? Okay.
Okay, yes,
We did say that.
Generally, I said
So-
November 28th, but that is a work session. Thank you for that clarification.
Yes, that's.
So, yes, November?
Yes, that's what we
Yes,
said.
November.
Let's do
Okay.
that. All right, item 3E is related to proposed changes to board operating protocol. Attached to this agenda item, I'd like to provide a little background to this. As we've had some new cabinet members come to the organization, they're in the process of integrating into our processes. And in that process, they've had, some questions have surfaced regarding clarity of communication with us and vice versa. So to that end, Sarah Bonzer brought the issue to me for some discussion and said, hey, this has come up. And so we pulled up our communications, and in the context of the cabinet discussion, I asked her to, figure out what appropriate language would look like to clarify the communication process on a couple of items that were less clear. So, Sarah, would you or who would like to speak to this particular item?
I'll be glad
Do you
to.
mind? Sure. Okay.
So the cabinet reviewed the board operating protocols around communication, and in your board packet on, I guess it's board operating procedure page 230, which is also page 18. Very confusing. There are two amendments. One is on items other than agenda items, and that was to clarify if a board member has a question about a non-agenda item, we ask that the board member then email that question to the cabinet member and copy the board president. And then the cabinet member will respond and copy the board president. And then the decision can be made whether to copy the whole board or not. If it's an agenda item, on the other hand, we always copy all board members. So everybody gets a copy of agenda items. And then if the board member has a general question for a department member who is not at the cabinet level, we still ask the board member to ask the cabinet member first and let the cabinet member then delegate that responsibility to the department member. And then when the response comes, we'll copy everyone in the chain. That way the cabinet can keep track of following all the communications through, so that we ensure that all responses have been given and we've closed any loops in communications. So we hope that that provides enough assurance that that will happen through the cabinet. Then I think the final one was on page 236, which was when a board member is copied on and or receives an email from a constituent regarding something happening at the campus. And if the board member would forward those to us, then we'll reply that we've received that and that we'll take responsibility for that issue, and then we will respond with further information at the board member's request.
So let me give an example of that. In this scenario, sometimes we get an email from an individual in the community that is to a campus principal, for instance, outlining something, and we are perhaps copied. Maybe all of us, maybe one of us, maybe some of us. So in that scenario, my question was, how do I know exactly what the follow-up is? Because sometimes I don't get copied on that. So the handling of that would be such that if I want to know how that is handled, then I request further information from that principal or the cabinet member. And then I can receive that. Okay?
Yeah, I guess I'll comment. I do like the changes under 3, and I may get the letters wrong. I believe it's E and F. Is that right?
E and F.
I don't have any concerns there. Under 8, I and J, I think I'd like to go a step further and just say that, I mean, at least I know for my sake, I mean, if I'm copied on email from a citizen or a parent or a teacher or whoever, I'd like to hear the resolution on everything.
So let's talk
Even
about.
if it's just a simple email to tie off the situation.
So the question she asked, we talked about this, we look at possible scenarios. If let's say the situation, the principal says, okay, here's everything that happened. Boom, 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 you're copied on that, the rest of us aren't, okay? Now you know the particulars of that situation. Now that individual that made that email is filing a grievance, okay? You now have information and you are not able to serve in the grievance, so it opts you out of that process. If all of us were copied in it, it gives us all too much information and it's not a neutral process for the grievance, okay? So that is why I understand your point of view, but that is why this remedy is different, and it says, if you wanna say, did this get handled? I wanna make sure it got handled. I may not know exactly how it got handled, then ask that question and you will get an answer, but you may not get all of the detail in order to protect you from the possibility of serving in that capacity.
And just to reassure, I did take these drafts through the attorneys just to vet that very thing, just to make sure we're providing maximum information, but still keeping our processes protected in other scenarios.
And I would say even before that, there was a lot of cabinet conversation on that very issue.
Really?
Maximize the communication without inadvertently doing, I mean.
But
just-
let's say you go, okay, I understand that risk, I wanna know anyway, they will answer your question, okay? But just know, that's the risk that you're taking. If it escalates into a grievance, then you can't participate at that time.
And
That makes sense. Thank
if
you
you
for
do
context.
want information, we can always say, let's check with the attorney and see what information we could provide without putting a possible scenario out.
Thank you for that explanation.
Okay.
So can I clarify, just a point of clarity on 8I and J, because we're asked if on the follow-up is we can get follow-up information either directly from the principal or from the cabinet member. I mean, if I'm hearing that the spirit of this is to make sure that the cabinet is in the loop, shouldn't we really be going back to the cabinet member for more information?
You can.
And let the rather than going back to the principal, because then you have the risk of the cabinet being cut out of the loop.
Well, I agree with you there, David, and also, I mean, I think that we've always just been given the latitude to go to the cabinet level, because it gets, you know, there's too much other noise that can happen and disconnect, like you say, from the cabinet member. So
I'm
would
fine
you,
with that.
would you wanna strike the word from principal?
Yeah, I think so. I think it'd be more appropriate for us to speak directly
In
to
both
cabinet.
I and J?
Yeah.
That's fine. I don't have a problem with
I mean, I know that's limiting our communication, but I think it's healthier for the organization.
So modification to item J is removal of the word in the last sentence, principal or. So it will say information from the cabinet member. Okay? Then item J will read, so this is the same scenario except that you, the board member, was the recipient in the two. Okay, so what the board member will do is forward it to the appropriate cabinet member and then copy the board president. Then, if you'd like more information, may request from the cabinet member again, omitting the words of the principal in the last sentence.
I think this follows into the spirit of the operating procedures that we've always had, and it's just clarification of wording. I like this, yeah.
I think we do need to acknowledge, though, that there are a few cabinet members who will bear this impact more than others because of the responsibility for schools. And so it's just a matter of having the administrative time to make sure that the loop is closed when they're focused on a small number of cabinet level members.
Okay. All right, so thank you for entertaining these items. Now, I'd like to ask for, if we have a motion to approve the amended board operating procedures as presented.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. All right, now we move to item 9, reports. These are for information only. The first one is the 2017-18 District-Based Improvement Plan. I invite now Dr. Dash Wersinger, Senior Executive Director of Assessment Research and Program Evaluation, to present the committee's report for the 17-18 school year. This report provides the framework for our site-based improvement committee work at each campus.
Board President, Trustees, first I need to thank and kind of mention why I'm doing this today. The DBIC is a committee that's made out of 30 people that are elected at the district level. I'll kind of get into a little bit of details, but it is facilitated by central office staff. And I co-chair this committee with Dr. Lisa Thibodeau from secondary curriculum and Laurie Taylor from elementary curriculum. So we have 4 meetings each year. We just had our second meeting yesterday, and I kind of will give a quick recap of that one too. Just kind of walk through the process of how DBIC kind of comes into place. So by legal, BQA legal, the district is supposed to have a district-wide planning and decision-making committee. And by statute, it has to do three things. It has to address performance, it has to address dropout prevention plans, review and plan dropout prevention, and the third thing is professional learning. It has to approve a district-wide professional learning plan. In our local policy, we've added several additional items into the to supplement what's in the legal. It talks about the process where it will be an advisory role to the superintendent in planning district-wide initiatives. There is well, maybe I should community connectedness programs, some other areas that, for example, that can be covered. So the role of DBIC is to serve as an advisory committee to the superintendent. So that's why, for example, it's a report-only action. It doesn't kind of, in some, there's this perception that the district DBIC kind of decides what to happen at the district level. It does not. It is an advisory committee that advises the superintendent on what needs to happen in that capacity only. So how do folks that serve on the committee get selected? There are 30 members, and there are 8 elementary, 4 from each level, middle school, high, senior highs. There are 4 principals from different levels, and also the district staff, the white staff members that are represented. And the election process goes like this. Each member is elected for a 3-year term, and we also elect an alternate, because most of the time if a teacher leaves, then the alternate takes that position. An email goes out to every teacher in the district to nominate themselves and telling them we have this many positions open, and if somebody has left that position, the length of the position remaining, and they can be nominated to be on the ballot. Then another email goes out, for example, let's say to all the middle school teachers, saying these are the teachers that are on the ballot for the middle school positions for DBIC, and they vote. So I know one question came up there, senior high. Well, maybe it kind of goes with who gets nominated and also who votes. So there can be cases where there are many from, if they kind of have a culture of electing people from that campus to the DBIC, that kind of continues in the long term. But it's a rolling term of 3 years, so we are not electing all 4 senior high high school senior high members in the same year. So we kind of roll 1 and 2, just like the board elections. So the work involved is around 13 different areas, and we've kind of incorporated that into the district initiatives. The 2 district initiatives we have, the innovative learning and mission-driven culture, and commitment to equity, the 13 that we are planning are kind of built inside those things. So just to understanding, a true DBIC plan shouldn't change too much from year to year, because most of the time these are long-term plans, they are multi-year plans, so it kind of drives kind of the culture of the district. So we kind of want a little bit of a stable plan instead of just changing it every year, and we communicate that to the committee, and when we facilitate that, you really can't recommend new things every year without kind of taking things out, because there are still certain limited number of actions that we can do in a particular period of time. So the 13 things, for example, we did add one this year into the DBIC, is to have a comprehensive campus improvement planning process in the district. And I'm not gonna talk too much about it because we already presented that plan to the board 2 months ago. The actions 2 to 6 are the STAR related and accountability related actions. 7 is professional learning, 8 is instructional coaching. Both of these are related to the professional learning requirement in the DBIC plan. And 9 through 12 is that one large district initiative on commitment to equity. This involves reducing learning gaps, AP, IB performance, college readiness indicators. So those are covered in 9 through 12. And 13 is also the district initiatives on special ed. I really want to talk more emphasis on little bit of details on what these critical actions are. So by state requirement, any indicator that is below 60% passing on STAR has to be at the district-wide level, have to be addressed in the DBIC plan. And that is on the STAR measures. And also on graduation rate, we have different benchmarks that we have to meet for 4-year graduation and 5-year graduation. So these 4 critical actions that we have are more detailed version of one of the state requirements. And I'm going to start with critical action 4, which is the special ed graduation, because this is the 2nd year that we are working on the special ed graduation plan. And how graduation works is, well, we are always kind of behind catching up, right? So what the special ed department have worked really hard going back, analyzing every kid that didn't graduate in 4 years or 5 years, and looked at what the root causes of the reason for their not graduating in 4 or 5 years. We have about 250 to 300 special ed graduates every year, or in the senior class. And so we went back and looked. For example, one of the root causes we found was 9th grade failure rates. So since graduation is kind of a 4 or 5 year plan, if you have some courses that you have a high failure rate in 9th grade, then you kind of automatically get at least a half a year behind, and sometimes you are catching up. So we started working all the way from 9th grade on the special ed graduation, and hopefully we will see these changes in 3 or 4 years' time when the graduation rate comes up. Because the cohorts of students that already we have, and we will continue to have for another year, is really our pre-planned kids that already kind of didn't go through these improvement action. The first 3 improvement actions, one is social studies in 8th grade, and writing in 7th grade, and writing in 4th grade. There are certain student groups that are scoring below the 60% mark. And there's a kind of a very good reason why this is a district-wide action. When state measures these things, they have like a minimum size requirement at the school level. In a lot of the schools, they don't have 25 students that kind of fit this criteria. So this kind of falls back at the district. It could be like 5 kids in this school, 10 kids in this school, 4 kids here. But when you kind of look collectively at the district level, now we have a couple of 100 kids, with 44 elementaries or 13 middle schools. So this is truly a district-wide plan, and I'll give you an insight on what we've done so far. We asked elementary and middle school principals to nominate an expert social studies teacher, or a 7th grade writing teacher, or a 4th grade writing teacher, who's also the reading teacher. And we held focus groups. In fact, we did the focus group for social studies last week. Yesterday we did the one for, today we did for 7th grade writing. And the teachers come, we kind of craft a problem statement, which is the problem statement in this report, and we go through a root cause analysis process, kind of soliciting input from teachers. What are the challenges at your school? What are the challenges at your school? Only thing we do is we facilitate the process, because we want the solution that we come up to be kind of their solution. It is not, we are kind of not dictating what the root causes of the problem are. We are not assuming that we already know it. So we go through a process called 5 Whys, where we kind of dig deep to find the underlying root causes, and we do that for about 2.5 hours. Then once we've identified the root causes that the campuses have, whether it is 1, 2, or 3, we brought in the curriculum experts to kind of the second phase of the process. The curriculum directors, for example, from social studies and reading, we brought in special ed and multilingual folks, and then we kind of trying to address the strategies to address these root causes. Now, we are at the point where we have developed strategies for social studies grade 8. We are almost done with 7th grade writing today. By the way, the teachers were here for about 4.5 hours. And tomorrow and Wednesday and Thursday, we are doing 4th grade writing. And 4th grade writing, we are doing it in 2 groups. We are doing it with bilingual campuses. We are bringing just the bilingual teachers and 4th grade teachers on the bilingual campuses, and we are doing monolingual campuses separately, because we kind of have a feeling that some of the challenges and root causes could be different in those, because we want to address them separately. So that's the stage we are in kind of implementing process, and the goal is right after Thanksgiving break, we will be operationalize these strategies at the district-wide level and kind of start going to the campus improvement planning process. The last step in the process is we have completed all campus improvement plans, and they are on the district website as of now, this morning. So if you do want to pull up and see what the process is, you can kind of get a good look. That's kind of my overview. I didn't want to go through 24 pages of the DBIC plan. Hopefully, if you kind of have a question that we can answer.
I have one question. When you talk about critical action number 4, and you've identified that some of your special ed students are not achieving graduation, and you've identified it as 9th grade failure rates, is it any particular course in 9th grade? Is it math or English, or where does it fall?
Well, it is one of the causes.
Okay.
Is the failure rate. It differs. Some campuses have kind of differential performance in it. So some of the parts that we are doing is we are looking at those couple of campuses that may have a slightly higher in, let's say, in English 1 compared to Algebra 1. So it is not necessarily the course itself that is the underlying issue. Underlying issue is the level of modification to the curriculum and the accommodations, and how the teachers modify and assess the students in the classroom. So a lot of these kids, you can't deliver the regular curriculum to these students.
Okay.
So you have to have a modified, accommodated curriculum, so that makes sure that curriculum material, the student is within reach. And there's a lot of scaffolding that needs to happen, so professional development for teachers is a big part of it. So to answer your question, not a particular course, but we see sections where different teachers have different levels of success at this.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So Dash, I don't have a question, more of a comment. Years ago, you might remember, Tammy, when we talked about new math, that you always said you wanted them to learn their multiplication tables. Well, writing for an English teacher, an old English teacher, writing is the multiplication tables of everything else. And so I'm really happy to see a focus on writing at a young age. because I've been a writer for a living, you know, so I know how important it is. And it is the building block of everything else that they'll do in you know, reading, writing, history, social studies. All of that is all based on being able to express yourself, because if you can express yourself, then you can understand somebody else's expression in studying what they're saying. So I'm really excited to see that.
In fact, that's one of the big things that we'll be doing in the 4th grade.
Yeah.
Because especially students who are coming through the bilingual program, what the differential levels of how to translate the Spanish writing into from 2nd or 3rd grade to 4th grade English writing and upper grade.
And I think when we had to diagram sentences is an okay thing too.
Thanks to teach that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dash.
Thank you.
All right, the other item for information only is item 9B, public hearing on our schools first rating report. First is short for Financial Integrity Rating of Texas. At this time, Steve Fortenberry will present information regarding the public hearing on schools first rating. Mr. Fortenberry.
Doctor will be fine.
Yeah, he might be going to get it now.
I learned from Richard Mack, do not ever correct anyone if they call you doctor, unless they need a prescription. This is the time of year that we're required by law to conduct a public hearing on our first rating. Copies, and I'm just going to briefly go over some of the highlights. A more in-depth version of that was made available by the greeters as folks entered the meeting tonight, and Linda tells me there's still a few copies available on the credenza over by the sound booth. So they'll certainly have more information than we're going to run through with this report. But briefly, the goals of the School First report. There are uniform indicators for all districts in the state to use, and it's the same indicators that measure the district's financial management practices. The main goal is not punitive. It's basically to improve the management of resources by school districts. And as I said earlier, this rating actually goes back to the 2015-16 school year. There's a lag in the time that the data is submitted to TEA. In fact, the audit report that you approved tonight doesn't get sent in till the end of November, so they're always, with this first rating, a year behind by the time we hold the public hearing. They use the staff and student data that we submitted in the fall of 2015 at the snapshot date. Same thing with the budget data. And then if they're looking at the actual financial data, it was with the audit that we submitted at the year end for the previous year, the 2015-16 school year. This is a grade report, and they've actually tightened this up some over the last 2 or 3 years. I believe last year, if you were above 70, it was superior maybe, and this year they make it a little bit more difficult. You have to be over a 90, kind of like when you were in school. If it's over 90, it's an A. Between 80 and 90, it's a B. The C is between 60 and 79, and then if it's below 60, it's considered failing or substandard. The way that the indicators work, there are 5 indicators that there's no score given for. They're critical indicators, and if you get a no answer on any of those, then you automatically fail. I won't read through each of those to you, but we received a yes on all of those, so we passed all of the critical indicators. Then there's 10 indicators that are weighted 10 points apiece under financial solvency and competence, and so that adds up to a maximum score of 100. We maxed out on all of those indicators. Kind of looks bad, we're just telling you the one that we didn't hit 100 on instead of going through the other ones. But I think this one's important. It's kind of, we discussed it last year when we also didn't get the maximum score on it. This is the indicator that measures our current assets to our current liabilities. So it's really supposed to measure liquidity. The higher the ratio, the higher the score. Our ratio was 2.23, which means I think the pure numbers, we had about 370 million in current assets and about 170 in current liabilities. So that left us with a ratio of 2.23, which only gives us 6 points. If we were at 2.5, we would have gotten 8, and if that ratio was 3 or above, we would have gotten the full 10. There's some uncontrollable factors that hurt us, and then there's one controllable factor that sets us back, but I think that we would much rather do what we're doing than worry about maxing out on this score. The two uncontrollable factors, a lot of that deals with whether your year end is June 30th or August 31st. School districts in Texas have the option of either having a June 30th or August 31st year end. This district chose several years ago to convert to the June 30 year end, but we're making our recapture payments all the way through August, and so as of June 30th, we have a liability for those payments we're going to make in July and August. That becomes a current liability, and it lowers that ratio because it's in the denominator. If we were an August 31st year end, we would have paid those off, and so we would have less cash, but the denominator would have fallen accordingly, and we'd end up with a higher ratio. That's not a problem if it's a non-Chapter 41 district, or if a district has an August 31st year end. So that's an uncontrollable factor. The other is kind of similar. We pay our teachers, as do, I guess, most, if not every single district, pays our teachers over 12 months. So teachers begin their paychecks in September. They get their last paycheck in August, even though they performed all the work by the end of May. That's just the way most districts work, to where teachers don't go 3 months without a paycheck. Again, if we had an August 31st year end, we would have paid off those salaries, so that would not be a liability, but since we have a June 30 year end, that shows up in our as a current liability. And that's a 40, of that 169 or so million of liabilities, 49 million of it is the accrued salaries at the end of June. We have, Missy's on one of the task forces or boards with TEA, Randy's on it too. One of the things that Missy's conveyed to them is there ought to be some way to treat districts the same, regardless of when their year end is, because it does penalize us. The controllable factor that hurts us, we're very proud of how quickly we pay off our debt. We have high principal payments. We think that helps the taxpayers because they're not spending so much of their tax dollar on interest. We had over $75 million of principal that was paid out in 16-17. Well, all of that principal that was going to be paid out showed up as a current liability, and so that hurts our ratio as well. If you have a district that, for instance, has those 35 or 40-year capital appreciation bonds that were sold at a discount, they don't have very much principal they're paying, but it's a much better financial decision to pay that debt off quickly like we do, and so that hurts us, but I think that's a good thing, and I would never suggest that we would change that just so we could score a little bit higher on this rating. So that's kind of the summary of the report. This is for information only, but you are required at this point to conduct a public hearing to finish this process off.
Thank you, Steve. I now open the public hearing regarding the district school's first rating. I welcome audience members to speak at this time. If you choose to speak, please do so at the podium at the front of the room. Since we have two, one here and one here, I think we're going to direct to this particular podium over here, okay? With no one wishing to speak, I now close the public hearing. Oh, now you do want to speak? Okay.
Not this one.
Okay. Okay. This isn't the regular public, this is just for this particular report. Okay.
Ms. Bender, may I make a comment about that first reporting?
Sure.
That you're on the task force as well as Randy McDowell, and I'm hoping that maybe we could also put something in the rating that accommodates for the recapture. Because that's not a clear picture. It's not apples to apples if we're compared to districts that don't have that liability as in their denominator. So that might be a point that we could hopefully bring home.
So
to the
let me
task
describe what
force.
this task force is. It's called School Finance Council, is that right, Randy? And it has administrators and maybe a couple of school board members and stuff. And they're trying to create a database for relative comparability, just as a source of information, not as a rating per se. Am I on the right track, Randy? So we've tried to illuminate issues that surface that, and they want to hear about the idiosyncrasies of things. So we've tried to call that out. We wouldn't get like rated, it wouldn't affect this. Okay, it's just for analysis purposes to help you figure out who are my comparable districts and how is my spending and compared to others that are kind of like us. So Randy, is that fair enough? You feel free to add to that.
No, that is correct on that committee. There is another committee that's going on, that's the TA Accounting and Auditing Committee that I co-chair, and we are currently revamping the first.
Okay.
And so
That's where this
that
will
is a
take
good
place.
suggestion. We have talked about that, and I will be sure and bring that up in the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, so we are complete with the first report and its hearing. All right, we are nearing the end. Item 10 is policies. These items require closure. This evening, this particular policy, like all others, have undergone prior review by the district's attorney and by each board member. I invite Carla Oliver to introduce policy EIC local. Ms. Oliver.
Thank you, President Bender. Again, EIC local academic achievement is in regard to class ranking. This policy is presented for approval under first reading this evening and will be presented for adoption under a second reading at a later meeting. This revision clarifies procedures related to high school coursework with associated weighted grade points students have taken prior to enrolling into the Plano Academy High School.
Okay, so just to be clear, because this is a topic of interest.
Certainly.
The only thing that is changing in this policy is related to Plano Academy High School, and it is changing the word statute to the word law. Right? So do I have a motion to?
No.
There's one more paragraph.
Point out the
On
others.
page 3 of 3.
That's the one. There's no looking at it.
Page 2 of 3, there's a paragraph added.
There's
Okay, the addition, thank you. So let's just call that out. Beginning with students entering grade 9 at Plano Academy High School in the 18-19 school year, any high school level course taken prior to grade 9 shall not receive weighted grade points for determining valedictorian, salutatorian, or for top 10% ranking. Correct. Is that accurate? All right. So given those two modifications, do I have a motion to approve as presented?
I move to approve the first reading of EIC local.
Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. I will now convene a 15-minute public comment session on non-agenda topics. Each speaker has up to 3 minutes. Secretary Nancy Humphrey, will you please get your clock ready for
Got it
3
ready.
minutes
It's ready.
per? Ms. Oliver, do we have any comment cards for non-agenda items?
Yes, President Bender, we have 3. We'll begin with Stacy Cochran.
Before we do that, I have some legal language I need to read.
Oh, I'm so
okay?
sorry, I jumped ahead.
No, that's fine. I didn't read it earlier since I knew we had
Got it.
speakers now. So give me just a minute. And if you're going to speak, please listen closely to the direction I'm going to give. And at the end, I'll summarize and try to put it in layman's terms. Pursuant to board policies BED legal, BED local, and BED exhibit, the board may place reasonable restraints on the number, length, and frequency of presentations, so long as it does not unfairly discriminate among speakers based upon their viewpoint. The board is not authorized to discuss or act on the public's comments or complaints if the subject is not on the agenda. So what that means is, if you're speaking to us at this time, we cannot talk back to you. So if you ask us questions, we cannot answer your questions because it is not a posted agenda item. If a member of the public or board inquires about a subject for which notice has not been given, the board may only make a statement of specific factual information, recite existing policy in response to the inquiry, or refer the person to a staff member for more information or assistance. If the subject of the public comment is already on the agenda for the meeting, the board may invite the speaker to stay until the board reaches the topic on that agenda, but we've already passed that part. 30 minutes in total have been allotted to hear persons who desire to make comments to the board. Persons who wish to participate in this portion of the meetings shall complete the appropriate public comment form before the meeting begins and indicate the topic about which they wish to speak. No presentation shall exceed 3 minutes. If you are not finished speaking by the end of your 3 minutes, I will interrupt you so that we can move to the next person. Nancy, will give like a high, signal at about 2 minutes. That will mean that you have 1 minute left.
Okay.
Delegations of more than 5 persons shall appoint 1 person to present their views before the board. Now finally, pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.074 and 551.0821, the board will not permit the presentation of personally identifiable information regarding a student and will not discuss the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, or hear a complaint or charge against an officer or employee pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.074. Should a speaker wish to address one of these issues, they must do so through the appropriate local grievance policies, F&G local, DGBA local, or GF local. Okay.
Thank you. Again, I'm sorry I jumped ahead a little bit, but joining us now would be Stacy Cochran.
Yes, right here. All right, and Ms. Cochran, when you reach the 2 minute, I will let you know you have 1 minute left, okay? Got it. Thank you.
Okay, I am here because I didn't know about a grievance policy. I contacted a parent in the district. I contacted the administration, tried to get a hold of the superintendent, but he has a gatekeeper. I understand I have a gatekeeper at work too, but I was not able to communicate directly with him. I did communicate with the executive director of the district. She did not direct me to any grievance policy or how to make this known to you all. But without going into much detail, most personal information, which I'm happy to share with you offline if you're interested. I have a 16-year-old son who's a sophomore at one of the high schools. He, if you know anything about the ACEs study, his ACEs is really high because his suffered a lot of abuse from his father. Up until September 19th of this year, I was very close partners with the district. I've been in the district since he was in kindergarten in 2007. I've always been the parent that's attended open houses. I've known his teachers. I've been in contact with them. I'm even the parent who quoted to him as a middle schooler when he said, "Mom, why do we have to go to the open house in my school?" I said, because research shows that parents who are involved in their students' education do better in school. Whatever. So I've always been very open with the campus and let them know, personally what he's going through. But on September 19th, the campus did something which I don't think that was right for a school district to do. And what they did was they called 911 on my child, not because he threatened to harm anybody in the school, not because of any criminal activity.
You have 1 minute.
And without notifying me previously. They did not notify me. They did not notify any of the emergency contacts on him. So my 16-year-old son was, not because of any criminal activity, was handcuffed, put in the back of a police car, and transported away from the school district, unbeknownst to me, until he left. And then the school district contacted me and let me know where I could find my son. As a result of this, as 16 years old, he had to sit in the emergency room by himself for 4 hours until I could find him and get there. I don't think that's right, and I don't think that that should happen. And so I just want to make you all aware of that. We are having conversations, and I hope those conversations continue. I hope to hear from you. so that we can work through this and really try to restore my trust in the district that I've had since 2007. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker will be, and I want to say the name correctly, Madan Goyal.
Thank you. Thank you for your service to the school district and the good work that the superintendent and the staff does. I've lived here 41 years. All my 3 kids went through BISD from elementary to the senior highs. And looking at them, they can stand up with anybody, whether they went to Yale or Duke or Wharton, and they've done as good as any private school or Ivy school the other kids came from. So that is how I expect BISD, and that's how it's been. And first, you all heard about Leadership Plano and Youth Leadership Plano, and they just started Plano Prime for seniors. I have a suggestion that we start a Leadership PISD or Leadership Plano education. If the chamber won't do, maybe you can approach the Plano Education Foundation. They might be receptive to starting a program like this. I think there will be a lot of parents and a lot of community members who like to learn more about the school district, and that would be an avenue to do it. They would get an education, they'll find out where is this Robin Hood taking our money and why it is taking, so that if we have 10, 20, 30 of those volunteers who have gone through such a program, that could spread into the community, ambassadors of the school district. The other point I want to take a minute on, the other speaker will be talking about.
You have
is
1 minute.
Diwali, that I hope you will consider putting the Diwali on our school calendar as a day where the students are off, but the staff, it's a staff education day or some other way. Diwali is one of the 3 major festivals in the world, and we have about 23% of students, Asian students, in our school district. When my kids went to school, I knew what we had to do. We had to do the function early in the morning or after school, or it was cumbersome, but now I didn't dare, sometimes we took them out of school, but now we have enough students that it will be very disruptive if all those students took the day off for volunteer. Thank you again for all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Shri Gaur.
May I give this hand up to?
You may just hand it to Secretary Kim O'Brien. Thank you.
I will let you know when you have 1 minute remaining.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Esteemed board members, superintendent, respected ladies and gentlemen. As Mr. Goel before me said about Diwali, I'm here to talk about those 43% or so students. I'm father of 2 girls who have been proudly students of PISD. Diwali is a major festival, not only for Hindus, but it is also for Sikhs, Jains, and Buddhists. If you combine the total population of these 4 religions, Hinduism is of course number 3 religion in the world. If you combine them, they are pretty close to 1.3 billion people. This is major festival for PISD students. Though it is officially recognized as an optional day off, it is very challenging to take the day off, as mentioned by Mr. Goel, because we want to give priority to education of our kids. We want to make sure that future is correct. They can contribute to American society in the best way possible. Diwali being the festival of light, as we say it, light represents knowledge. We have a shloka that says, Tamso ma jyotirmay. That literally translates to take us from darkness to enlightenment. What darkness means is darkness of not just ignorance, darkness of the world, the evil deeds, the bad things, all the things that are really dark in nature. From there we want to go to just not knowledge. It's a deeper meaning is the righteousness, the right thing that we should do, the resolution that we should have to do the right unto whatever extent it is possible. So what I'm trying to say with that is Diwali is just not a simple celebration of taking somebody from darkness of ignorance to light of knowledge. It goes beyond that. It tells our kids that you have to stay fast, you have to stand up to your principle, the basic core values of life. You have to persevere, just like a lamp perseveres, despite all the oddness, all the oddities in the world, it tries to give the light. It tries to lighten the world. That's what teachers do. That's what your school district does.
1 minute.
Yes, ma'am. And we think because of that alone, it is such significant for a PhD to recognize it. In fact, there are many school districts which already recognize this as an official vacation day. They are in New York, and you can see in an exhibit, page number 2 and page number 3, they have less number of Indian origin people than what PISD has. So if PISD board is able to adopt this as a vacation day for students, as Mr. Gwen mentioned, you can have it as included weather day or a student development day, whatever it is. It will give a strong message to the kids that, look, this country has truly the justice and liberty for all. It recognizes, it embraces the difference in cultures, but it also recognizes those important vacations or holidays that are inculcating not just some religious practices, the practices which are applicable to humanity, the practices that are really, really important for all kids to learn. You have to go from darkness to lightness. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. With no further business, this meeting of the Board of Trustees is adjourned at 9:38 p.m.